Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Conversations with Carrie. Today I'm here with my friend Nicole Holland. Nicole, welcome.
Hello, and you know what?
What?
We didn't actually test. I don't know. Are you hearing me okay?
Totally. Yes.
Okay, cool. Because I've got this mic over here, and then I got this thing here, so I don't know what I'm coming in on.
Yeah, you're fine either way.
Okay.
Nicole, I don't know if you've ever watched the show, but here's how we do things over here. I interview amazing people, people who are known for something. Maybe they even wrote the book on that thing. They're expert in their field or in one area of their life. They're known for something. And we talk about something else. Because I believe that how you do anything is how you do everything. And honestly, I'm really tired of just like canned, and I know you share we're simpatico here. I am so tired of canned like interviews that all lead to buy my stuff. So we're just gonna have a conversation. Are you down for that?
You know I am.
I know you are. Okay, I have so many freaking questions to ask you. So, background for everybody who's watching. Um, Nicole and I met in an online group a few years ago for entrepreneurs who were looking for joint venture partners. And we met in that group, like we knew of each other. We were both kind of visible in the group, but we never actually personally met. And people kept telling me, oh, you need to know Nicole Holland. Nicole Holland's amazing. And the more people who told me, Carrie, you need to know Nicole Holland, the more I was like, I don't want to know that bitch. And sorry, Nicole, love you. And,
I have that effect on people.
um, and a year or two went by, and then someone who I actually know, like, and trust, because before this, it was a lot of acquaintances, and I don't know, it felt like a lot of hype. Someone actually know, like, and trust was like, do you know Nicole? And so I started following Nicole and seeing what she was up to and realizing Nicole's super rad. I love her. And we connected again. And apparently she'd kind of been doing the same thing about me. We connected again and it was like, yay. But I was thinking, Nicole, about the first time we met and how I knew we were going to be like actual friends was because we'd been communicating back and forth online. And then I made you a video one day, like from my car, looking all frazzled and like morning mascara all over my face. And you made me a video back looking exactly the same. And I was like, okay, we are going to be friends. And after that, I went to a retreat that Nicole hosted and just fell in love with her. And yeah, so anyways, that's the background on Nicole without giving her professional bio. So many things I want to ask you about, but I think the best place to start, Nicole, because the thing that was so fascinating to me about you is your entrepreneurial journey. Like your story of all the different entrepreneur jobs you've done and the age that you started was mind-blowing. So do you mind telling us that story or giving the highlight reel?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about, but I will say that my first entrepreneurial endeavor to note that kind of got me understanding value for value and enjoying that was Red Wagon Produce. Is that what you're meaning?
No, it's not even what I'm meaning. So now I don't even know
Oh,
about this. So tell me.
okay. So I was about 8 years old, and my father, he gardened. He just loved gardening. Our entire yard was garden plots, and then he even rented garden plots down. It was just his like. I don't know that it was even an issue of like, this was like 70s and 80s. So I don't even know if it's an issue of like pesticides and stuff like that, like things are, concerned about now. He just like, I think it was his decompression. I think it was his way to like, get by in life without killing somebody. So he gardened a lot.
Casually without killing someone. Okay.
And so we always had fresh food. So it's funny because growing up, like I knew what a tomato tasted like. And then when I moved out on my own and I had to go shopping at a grocery store, I was like, I can't find tomatoes. Like, what is this? Right. So,
Oh, that's a cattail walking by.
that was a cattail.
Just at the exact moment you said, "What is this?" It's like this weird thing.
That was my Anderson. Um, yeah. So, we always had amazing fresh food from spring through autumn, and then he canned a lot too. So when we did have the fresh food, um, obviously our family would eat it, and he'd give it to all the neighbors and his friends, and he'd take it to work and whatever, but there was still an abundance. Like there was still too much food. And so he said, well, we're going to sell it. And he was teaching me and my little brother, I guess, some life lessons. And so we'd put the different vegetables into brown paper bags and write a price on it. And then we would put all the bags of the excess produce into my little brother's red wagon. And we would take it up to the pool. And Sean was like really not a fan of sitting out there and doing it, but I loved it. I was like, I would take orders from the parents that were coming in, but they didn't want to get their, produce and take it into the pool. So I'd like put it aside for when they came out. And it was just, I loved it. I thought it was the neatest thing. I loved interacting. I loved providing value. And yeah, maybe I was a little bit older than 8, but it was before Sean got cancer. So I was in my either, high single digits or low, yeah, probably between 8 and 10. And so that was my first entrepreneurial endeavor, I guess. And then, I always did things like seeing how can I help people, knocking on doors. I was a mother's helper. I would like do chores. I would do tasks outside, whatever. But yeah, I was a life coach. I was a massage therapist. I had a corporate training firm in Germany. Is that the one you're talking about?
That is, so when I asked you a while ago, I was like, I need to know more about you. Tell me, and I kept going backwards. And I remember, so maybe we should pause because sidebar, you're Canadian and American.
Yes.
So I think part of that was you were in Germany. I can't remember now. You were in Germany. But
for
this
5 years.
So you were born in Canada?
I was born in Canada to American parents, so I'm very blessed to have a dual citizenship. And I was in Toronto just until I was about 3. After my brother was born, my parents wanted to be closer to family. They grew up in Maryland, so that's where we moved to. And that was where my childhood, up until the age of 16, was primarily. I was in some other places too, but primarily I was in Maryland until I was 17.
Okay, so that was the part of the story and I haven't forgotten about your brother having cancer. I have a feeling that's a big part of the story. I'm skipping over that in the time being to say that's the time that really got me and I'm so interested in this as I talk to more amazing people and how so many people, so different than me, when they were very young, were out on their own in different countries, and you were out on your own in a different country starting a business, and that blew my effing mind. So how old were you when you were in Germany?
I went to Germany when I was 21. So I originally went there with my ex-husband. So I got married quite young. But then we also split quite young. And so I left, and then I had gone back. And it was just an evolution. I was 23 when I started my firm. But what happened was, first, while we were still married, I was working for corporate training firm, and that was I learned quite quickly, not when we divorced, they had to sponsor me, so that changed the experience. It was a great experience before. They owned me, and then things started getting really uncomfortable, and I had a 3-month thing. If I quit, I would have to first of all, I'd have to find another sponsor, and then the other thing is I couldn't work in my field for a minimum of 3 months. There was a non-compete clause. And so then I did that and waited out, went to another company, excuse me, and I was doing admin, and I was doing training, and I was writing curriculum and needs analysis. I was doing all the things. And I was just realizing we were hiring people that were really not experts. we were not paying people well. We were paying the companies, or we were charging the companies huge amounts of money, and it just didn't sit well with me. And I wound up having an opportunity to take on a freelance contract somebody I knew told me about. And then that turned into a larger contract where I brought in subcontractors. And then I started, I had other companies hiring me. And yeah, I formed a proper company. So it was, and then, yeah, the euro came and we made the decision because we were B2B, and there were a lot of companies going through transitions, and it really hurt the German economy quite a bit when things changed. And so I decided to wrap that up.
So how many years was that total that you did that?
3. No, well, the trade, like, that I had it as my own, or that I was working in this field and had it on my own? Because that,
I think just like the fact that it just blows my mind that you formed a company at 23, that you had the like.
I didn't, it like fell into my lap. I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I had to hire a lawyer, and I had to hire a tax guy, and I wouldn't have even known those things had I not had an amazing friend named Ray, or Raymond, who was my partner. Like, that's how we formed the company. I couldn't have done all of that. So I just wanted to serve people, and I just really loved it, and I loved really understanding their needs, not just the surface stuff, but the deeper stuff, and being able to tap into that and help them have faster success at what they wanted to do. And so he was my partner that dealt with he was also German, and he's a business guy. So he dealt with all of that, all the back end. And I just got to go out and do what was fun for me. And it wasn't, and again, it was like, it fell into my lap. Somebody I knew who thought I was awesome gave me a referral for a company that was looking to hire a company, but they'd rather keep things kind of smaller and in-house because they could pay me less and get a better quality connection. And that's really how this started. It was kind of word of mouth. And then after that, I started going out. And it was more Raymond also that would do the business meetings with me to get those clients. So shout out to Raymond.
Yeah. So that ended when you were like 26, right?
Yes, that ended. Yes, it was when the euro came, and I made the decision that I had to close. I gave the few contracts I had left. I gave there were 2 trainers that I had that were amazing, and they were already working with the clients. And I said, just take this on yourself as a freelancer. And I made the transition with the company and everything. But yeah, it was because of the economy, and it was a good decision. It hurt my heart, and like, I haven't been back yet. I'm ready now. Like, I can totally go to Germany and not feel like I have to stay. But there were years that I was like crying about, not crying, but like my heart was crying that I thought it was home. Like, even though I wasn't born there, I loved Stuttgart. I loved being there, and it was like so natural, and it felt good. And so like when I left, and then also I left, when you're young, you don't really think about long-term consequences sometimes, or I didn't. And I was like months away from getting my permanent residency.
Ooh.
When I left. Yeah. And I didn't think that through at the time, right?
Yeah.
And after I left, I was like, oh my gosh. So if I ever wanted to go back, I would have to start over. And now it's like, now I'm happy where I am. But for many, many years, that was like, I can't go back to Germany because I will stay, and I will stay illegally. I don't care. But I did.
Oh, I didn't know that you loved it so much.
Oh my gosh. It was so home. I loved living in Germany. It was amazing.
So that's interesting because now home is Canada.
Now home, yes, is Niagara.
Tell me how you wound up back there.
God knows.
Right? From being born in Canada.
Dude, like, you really want to go through this? I mean, it's crazy.
I don't need all the twists and turns. Like, I know you've been I just find it so interesting. Okay, I'll just tell you. I just read okay, how you do anything is how you do everything.
Yeah.
What I find so interesting is the thread, right? That goes through everything. And I just read Chip and Joanna Gaines' books. I'm like the last person on the planet to read it, I think.
I haven't read it. I don't even know what it is. So,
oh, okay. Chip and Joanna Gaines have a show. It's called Fixer Upper, and everyone loves them. They're just like the golden people of reality television because they're so real and they're like really good people, you know, or at least as far as we know. So, so I read their book and was just like so interested and amazed at how each of these things that fell into their lap, or you said something like when something didn't sit well with me. And I'm curious, that's actually a question I have for you, is like when things don't sit well, how does Nicole Holland respond? I think that's my next question for you. But all that to be said is it was so interesting to me to see how everything takes you exactly where you need to go. So
always.
So 3 questions, you pick. Number 1, when things don't sit well, how does Nicole Holland respond? Number 2 is the winding road that led you to Canada, right? Like are you where you're meant to be? Maybe is a good question. I forget number 3. So how about those 2?
Okay. The first one was
when things don't sit well.
Yes. Okay.
What does Nicole Holland do?
Yeah. So Nicole Holland is an evolution like everybody else, right? And my belief, I think, is very aligned with yours and probably a lot of your viewers as well, which is there's a perfect, like, we're just bodies, but we're spiritual and we're here for a purpose. And like, for me, the journey is really interesting. I used to be more reactive, I would say, when I was younger. And I can just, in a nutshell, tell you like a lot of the movement and a lot of the my earlier life was and getting things done was out of necessity from neglect. Like, I didn't have, when you get emancipated when you're 16 years old and move to another country, it's not because things are good at home, right? Like when you drop out of high school, like I learned to get by from the time I was a baby. And that's because of my circumstances that I was born into. And that's just how we have our reality, right? And it's like, I didn't know anything different. So you become you manage your environment, you manage your situations. So a lot of moves and things like that were reactive or protective, right? Because I would feel unsafe or something like that. And it's always in our head, right? But yeah, it's just, I mean, we could get into that, but I don't want to like drag in there. It's more sorry, so I'm supposed to be telling you.
There's no supposed to.
I know. So but I had something good for you, how I deal with things. Okay, so that's just a backstory, right? So I used to be more reactive. And again, I mean, I'm a work in progress like everybody else. And ideally, I would love to say immediately when things don't sit well with me, I say done and no and get out. But I think you know me well enough to know that's not what I do, or that has not been what I've been doing. And I also appreciate, like, I'm not judging myself. I'm not like, this is wrong. But it is not how I want to do. So I'm, again, working on it, but something just happened very recently. In fact, when things don't sit well with me, I have tended to recognize but ignore, right? Because it's almost like I made a decision to do something or to be with someone or to be in a place or whatever the case may be. And then when I start getting red flags, unless it's like, I mean, I'm not an idiot, but when I'm in a situation that's not sitting well, like just that place where it's like something's not right, but I'm not sure what it is, and things start going awry, I usually give it time, which is something I would like to do less of. I'd like to give things less time. And there's areas of my life that I've definitely moved quicker on. But when it comes to relationships and people, which is usually what the suck is, I give it time and I get busy and I get unfocused and I get a mess and I get sick and I get like in this whirlwind until at some point I go, what the hell am I doing? Something tips it off and I'm like, oh no, I'm done. And it's really like in an instant. Even when I decided to quit smoking many, many, many years ago, it was really like I smoked for 15 years. I never thought I'd ever give up cigarettes. I thought I'd be smoking in my 80s. But in an instant, when I had the realization that made me want to quit, I was done. It took me some time to weed myself off and to make that plan. And, but I think it was probably like within 2 months, I was done, completely done smoking. And so it's interesting because when things don't sit well with me, I have tended to let them fester longer than I want to. And each time things like that happen, I'm getting better and quicker about recognizing it and cutting the cord.
So do you think, because I'm recognizing when things don't sit well with me, my tendency is to assume the problem is me a little bit, like think, okay, yes, I give the other person the benefit of the doubt.
Yes.
Right? Or the situation the benefit of the doubt. I go into like, there's all these things that I don't really know and it feels like this, but it could be that, right? Yeah. I tend to like,
don't take it personally. Like, yeah, there's circumstances, but I'm sure it's not that because you know what the realization I had the other day was when I get into this, I think it is me trying to prove myself right. Because the idea that I was wrong and I made a bad judgment at 43 years old about somebody's integrity or, getting involved in working with someone or supporting someone or doing something that feels so wrong but felt so right before. Yep. I'm thinking, what am I doing to bring this on? What am I doing to? I'm always giving them I have been always giving them the benefit of the doubt. And waiting and honoring their space and not wanting to interrupt their flow. And it sucks the life out of me. And that's what I kind of came to, because like I said, I've been dealing with this. Like I literally just in the last 5 days kind of went, oh my gosh, we're done. And now we're clearing this crap out. And it feels really good when I get to do that. And the recognition that it shouldn't have to get to the point that it's been getting to for me. And like I said, each time it's less, right? Yep. It's less destructive and that's great. And I can move on quicker but it's always for me. That's one thing I know. God, like universe, God, whatever you want to call it, I always feel is presenting experiences that are for me, not to me. So I never feel like the victim. I can't lie. I get angry. I get pissed off. I get frustrated. I get feelings hurt. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, I have recognized that. I have articulated it and now I'm done with it. And so every single time it always moves me forward faster in a better position. So I actually appreciate that those contrasting situations to an extent. And I do appreciate them. I'm just looking forward to them being fewer and faster.
Beautifully stated. I loved how you said that. And one of the things that I really enjoy about you as a friend and as a colleague is that every once in a while, I'll get this like crazed rant from Nicole. That's like okay, I just need to talk about this. We're both verbal processors and it is so beautiful. It is so fun for me to watch you rant because it's usually like a video. So we're not actually in real time. Be like, oh my gosh, this just happened, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what to do about this. And so I have seen you, like when you said I get busy, I'm like, oh yeah, she does. Because you get really busy. You get hyper, I don't want to say hyper productive because I'm not sure how productive it is. Yeah.
It's like totally, I don't focus on me. I start doing all these things for external people. And I'm like, what am I doing? What about me?
But I love watching you and then you'll be like, okay, blah, 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 and you'll go off and you'll be like, oh, wait, okay. And I'll watch you process the whole thing until you have your answer and you're like, okay, I get it. Thanks, bye.
Everybody needs a business BFF like Carrie.
That is true. Okay. So you mentioned, and really one of the things I really want to talk about that we haven't even got to, but I feel like it's a good time to bring it up. Look at Nicole going like this. You talked about how when you make a decision about something, it happens. And what I really wanted to talk to you about today, what I was excited to talk to you about, because we haven't talked about it too much, is that I met you in person a year ago next month.
Yeah.
And you had at that time lost almost 50 pounds. And you were,
I think I was around 30 and
okay. Well, I feel like you did. So you lost a bunch of weight and you've kept it off.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You've kept it off for an entire year. And I remember that in that time, you were dealing with kind of a lot of weight loss hate. And so I'm just wondering what this whole process has been like for you. Because when I met Nicole, and I want to just tell you like point blank, like my own judgments around it and all of it, because knowing you through this process and then it causes me to evaluate myself. So I'll just tell you up front. When I met Nicole, she was heavier. You had this really short hair, always purple hair, which we haven't even had that conversation, but she had this really short purple hair, these great big boobs, and you were just like you're a bigger girl. My assumption was that you were a lot older than you actually are because you were heavier, you were powerful, but kind of matronly. And I'll be honest, I'm going to sound like such a bitch. I'll just say it. Try not to judge people, but if you judge, I get it. As a thinner woman, you weren't threatening to me, right? There was a part of like this, maybe it's just being a competitive person. I don't know, but you're not threatening to me now, but that's because I know you. But there was a dynamic. So this is just an interesting dynamic between women, I think, right? That we're not threatened by heavier women. But there's a role that a heavier woman plays. Anyways, all this to be said, you lost a bunch of weight and you've kept it off and you experienced a bunch of hate in the process. So I want to know about that. But this subject that I've brought up around how people perceive you as a heavier woman based on now you're much leaner, like how that is affecting the way you show up in your life and business and how people perceive you. So start wherever you want. That was a giant.
Yeah, that's great. So I think that, like some of the things you said, and thank you so much for sharing so openly. I think some of those things you said, like, I don't even recognize, I don't really look at people and recognize weight. And for me, I wasn't like self-loathing or anything like that. It was sort of an is.
What does that mean? It's sort of an is.
Yeah, I'll explain in just a second. I just want to say before I do, about 3 days ago, I got a message from somebody who I had met years ago, about 4 years ago, who I just thought was a really neat person, and I wanted to get to know more. And I thought there could be some great collaboration. He was, was doing some publication stuff, and he really didn't give me the time of day, which I just assumed, well, he doesn't know who I am yet, and blah, blah, blah. So we had friended on Facebook, and I thought, well, I'll get to know him and see how I can support him. But he really just kind of always blew me off. And so I forgot about the guy. Well, about 3 nights ago, maybe it was just a few days ago, he commented, and I haven't had any contact with him in a few years. He commented, he put like a wow face on one of my photos, and said he sent me a private message. Actually, I should tell you exactly what it says because it was really a bit bizarre. I may have actually deleted it already.
I hope you didn't.
I hope I didn't too. Let me see. I just have to think of his name and I can pull it up. What is the guy's name? Oh, I know what it is. Hang on a second. So this is a professional contact. So basically,
and not someone who you know well.
Right, right. It was just somebody I met um, through, our business. I mean, I met him in San Francisco when I was at a business event. So that was back in 2015. October 2015 was our beginning of, and he's an editor and a web designer and whatever. He's a magazine and all that stuff. So we communicated a little bit, um, but then that was it. Like it just never, it was almost like, oh, good luck with your endeavors, like
Right.
pat on the, which is
Yes.
fine. Everybody, I mean, we all have to recognize where we want to spend our time. And so then the last communication with I had with him was just after, or just like 2 days before I launched my podcast in 2016, so March 2016.
Okay.
Then all of a sudden on April 2nd, he writes, clicked over to see what you've been up to, and wow, my God, Nicole, when did you get so hot? With a winky face and a smiley face. I'm like, I just did a laughing face.
WTF, bro?
Right. I was like, I don't know how to take that. Like, is that, first of all, it's just weird, right? Now, so to answer your question and all of this stuff, my situation is I had never had boobs before. I been my entire life. When I moved to Canada, I started putting on weight, and it was really weird when it happened, right? It was my early 30s, and I was like, I don't know why I'm putting on this weight, but I was moving from the desert. I lived in Arizona, and I could not keep on weight there.
Okay.
In fact, there was a time I was an administrator at a charter school, and I was working like stupid hours and there was a lot of stress. But I mean, I have never, like, God bless all the people who have eating disorders. I've never had an eating disorder. The closest thing I've ever had to an eating disorder is just eating too much. Um, but like, I just had a high metabolism or whatever, maybe stress, whatever. But I've never had a high weight problem. I had never had.
Right.
And so I moved from the desert where it's like hot and I was very active. Like I was out all the time. To Vancouver, and it's gray, and it was in the winter, so it was like going from 80 degrees sunshine to like 45, 50-degree icky days where it's just gray and wet.
Rain.
Yeah. And so at first I thought it's just my body adjusting, right? Like I put on 5, 10 pounds.
I'm insulating. I've got to keep.
That's exactly what I used to say. I was like, it's so crazy. And people would even comment like, oh my gosh, you've put on some weight. Not in like a rude way, but in a, like people who always knew me, it's like, oh, you look a little bit different. It's like, yeah, I'm getting fat. And it's so funny because I look at these pictures now from back then and I'm like, I wasn't even fat at all.
Right.
But going from, my normal weight that I didn't try to be at was 130 pounds for most of my adult life. There were times I was a little bit under, and that's when I was like trying to put on weight. So 130 pounds is my natural weight. And then once I got to Canada, I started putting on insulation. So I was like, okay, this is probably natural and normal. And then over time, I was a foster parent. I was doing outreach. I was running around. So I stayed right about like 140. I think maybe I got to 140, but I was only about 10 pounds, 15 pounds heavier than I had normally been.
Which, just for perspective, because I know at your height, 130 is extremely thin. 140 is thinnish.
Well, I mean, I felt fine. Do you know what I mean? I felt like I don't look at the weight. It's about how I'm feeling. Like I felt fine.
Right.
But then when I really started gaining weight was when I came to Ontario and I started working for the government and I started working in corrections. And so one thing about that is it was just a miserable, it's a slow, for me, it was a slow process losing myself, little by little over a few years. And on top of that, you're in a uniform. And I would work 12-hour shifts pretty much every day and do OT. And so it's like you don't notice. So I mean, I'm wearing men's clothes. I preferred wearing bigger clothes because as a woman, and again, I mean, I don't know. Like I have no boobs. I'm back to makeup. It's great.
Thanks for the share.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it was like I wore men's tank tops, under my uniform. I wear men's boxer shorts. I liked the looser men's clothes. And so I wouldn't really notice. Like, I mean, the rare occasion I would wear something that was not a uniform or pajamas, I had all different kinds of clothes, so I would just find something that fit. And then when I went from youth to adult, I was really like right before I left youth.
Wait, youth to adult. Oh, in the correction system. I'm like,
yes,
what?
yes.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so I was a youth correctional officer, and then I went to the adult system. And around that point, and I was just really like not loving. I saw. I mean, I was in conflict all the time. I saw things that were not sitting right. Well, right.
Yes.
I did not. And one of the reasons I came out here was my boss in Vancouver when I was doing the crisis supports, and she said, they just opened up this state-of-the-art facility in Ontario for young offenders, and you have this experience, because I used to work in a facility in Arizona that was amazing, and it was a positive peer culture. We took adjudicated male youth and helped them refocus on being a productive member of society, taught them life skills. It was amazing. And it's so cool. But anyway, so I really believe in rehabilitation for young offenders, and I'm passionate about it. I've always been passionate about it. And so when I went to Ontario to work in this facility and all these things I heard, and then I saw none of it's true, and they're actually doing the opposite and creating monsters, in my opinion, and the way it's run and everything up against the system, like that really was, I was conflicted in so many ways. And the people I was working with, even at the beginning where I was like, oh my gosh, we should be doing this because this is, and people would say, these guys are never going to change. Like these guys, there's,
Aww.
and so it was really hard for me to be in that environment. And I think that that's probably now in hindsight, a lot of it too, right? That protection was not just from the cold, but it was from my environment.
Yeah.
And then when I went to adult, it even got worse. And then I saw some things that just weren't okay in the world. And I felt trapped about doing anything. Like I felt like I was totally stuck. And the manifestations that happened were then I was sick. I was gaining weight. Eventually I got, in May of 2016, they started me on medication to treat symptoms of lupus. And so at that point though, I couldn't walk up my stairs. There were days I literally couldn't even crawl up my stairs or down. I couldn't breathe some days. Like my body was killing itself and there was nothing I could do about it. I lost all my strength. So during this time, I gained weight. So I had more weight to carry, right? And one of the symptoms that affected me was arthritis. And so it was just more pain. And so I could not, or I believed and felt like I could not do anything at that time to change my situation.
Yeah.
Once I was on the meds for a while and my pain and my energy level started coming back to neutral and coming back to normal, and I could actually lift the garbage up. I mean, really stuff like I couldn't lift things that were 5 pounds sometimes. I couldn't cut potatoes. I didn't have the strength. And so once I started getting healthy again, then I was like, okay, I want to do something now about the weight. So during the time that I was, quote, fat, right, that I had that extra weight on me, I never looked at myself. I mean, I definitely looked in the mirror and I was like,
I don't recognize her.
Right. But I didn't feel that way. I've always felt like me. I felt like me not well, but I've not, I never saw myself as a big woman. except in pictures I see, and I'm like, whoa, my gosh. So when I made the decision, I had made the decision already a while, and I ate healthy. I used to be a personal trainer. Like, it's not like I don't know what to do. I just, no matter what I tried, couldn't take the weight off. I would go a little bit down, but I'd go back up. And I was hovering right around that 200 mark. And I remember when I was a correctional officer, when I saw 198 on the scale, because I had to get bigger pants, right?
Yeah.
Each year we got, and it was like I started having to get bigger clothes. And at 198, I was like, I am not stepping on a scale again. I don't even want to see. So I'm sure I went over 200 pounds. And again,
Right.
my normal weight, my frame, my whole life was 130. So that's a lot of weight that I put on. And so I knew I couldn't do it on my own because I was trying. And I had a client who all of a sudden lost all this weight. And I'm going, and then she was a healthy girl. And I knew she wouldn't do something stupid. So I said, hey, what are you doing? And we had a conversation. She told me about this program, this protocol called Ideal Protein. And they had one in the pharmacy at my doctor's office. And I went in and talked to them, and it seemed like a fit for me. It's such an easy program. All you have to do is actually follow it. Most people don't do it. They fail because they don't follow it. But it's super restrictive, but it guarantees you're going to lose the weight. And then, they at the same time are teaching you how to substitute unhealthy habits for healthy habits, educating you and stuff like that. So I had already made the decision that the weight was coming off, and I wanted to get back. And it's, a lot of people would say, oh, when I was in the process of losing the weight, oh my gosh, you've lost so much weight. You're getting so thin, but not in a like positive way or not in a
Yes.
supportive way. It was like and I'm like, okay, like your opinion, it just, okay, whatever. Like, I don't know why we feel like we have to comment on people's weight or changes. But I got a lot of comments, and then I started, when I was really losing weight, I got like people writing me that I didn't even know from the internet, basically saying, I'm worried about you. I think you have an eating disorder. Like, you need to get help. And I'm like, this is insane. And I don't even remember what I know the post that I made on social that you're talking about now, because I was up to my eyeballs frustrated with other people's opinions. I mean, I have a neighbor across the street. I couldn't leave my house when she was outside because she would come over and tell me how worried she was about me and what I should do. And I'm like, listen, and she's an old lady, and I'm like, listen, I don't want to hear it anymore. Like, this is none of your business. I haven't asked you for support, but all my neighbors were saying things. It was just really frustrating. And so these people have only known me sick, right? They've only known me
Right.
big. And it's like, I don't feel thin. I feel
Right.
healthy.
Normal.
I feel normal. And I will tell you, when I was getting ready to launch the new show, and there were some all-nighters, and it was like lunchtime, it was stressful. I do still weigh myself, not every day anymore, but I do monitor, my hydration level, and my, that's something I learned while I was doing the program. And I weighed myself one day, and I was like 120 pounds. And I was like, what the F?
Girl.
So literally, I went immediately to the steakhouse down the road, and I got the big steak and all the stuff, the potatoes and the corn, and I even ordered dessert. I was like, I just need to put weight on. Like, this is unsafe. So it's not like I'm an idiot. If I monitor where I'm at, and I feel good. And at that time, I was feeling like really faint and dizzy, and so
Yeah.
also I went to my doctor, and she's put me on iron supplements. She did my blood
Mm.
work, and she's like,
Yeah.
oh, your iron's really low.
Did
So
you, this is just a curiosity
yeah,
question. When your iron was really low, did you find yourself chewing ice chips?
no,
Oh, that's whenever I want to chew on ice whenever my iron is low. That's my cue.
I don't chew on ice ever. It hurts my teeth. I
Um,
don't like cold
there
things
you
on
go.
my teeth.
So sidebar, when I was pregnant with both my last two kids, maybe all three kids, I don't know, but I would get low in iron, and I was like an ice junkie. Because I needed ice so bad, I thought I needed ice so bad, I would stand in the shower with hot water pouring over me so that I could chew the ice and not like shiver. Like
Oh my gosh.
I had issues, but okay.
I go for meat. And the thing is I really don't like eating meat. I was a vegetarian for a long time. I was a pescatarian mostly. I'm primarily a pescatarian, but when I went on the protocol, that was the hardest thing for me when I started the protocol was I had to eat meat. I didn't have to. I could have
Right,
made a choice that I wouldn't, and then I had all these other things I had to do, and it
right.
just didn't make sense for me. So I started eating meat when I started the protocol to lose the weight. And so red meat, I go for that when I'm
Yeah,
feeling dizzy.
it's an easy fix. Okay, I have questions, and I'm mindful of the time because I got some kids to pick up. So, what I find interesting about your story is that all the people who were like skinny shaming you, basically, right? Because I'll be honest, like the transformation was drastic, and it
Mhm.
happened so quickly that I can understand why people were worried, right? Especially like with my background, I coached a lot of anorexic girls, so like I do understand why people are worried. And I remember I wouldn't say I was worried about you. Well, I had talked to you like during the time, right? So that's a huge part of it when you're like, this is how I normally am. This is, like I sort of knew, okay, I don't need to worry about my friend Nicole. But when people are only seeing you on the internet, and that's what I think is interesting is the internet only knew you as sick,
Well, my
right?
neighbors also.
Yes. And so I can see where all of that came from. And yet, how, because I remember what you were struggling with at the time, what didn't sit well with Nicole, right, was like, who gives these people the right
Yeah.
to go ahead?
Yeah, and even when we talked, I mean, it was like I was seeing a guy who I'm not seeing anymore. Um, it did continue on for longer than it should have, but I mean, he was a jerk, and I mean, he was just convenient. I don't know. It was a blip in the matrix. But he met me heavy. And I mean, that was hugely shocking to me that when I was losing weight, he didn't like it. And he said some things that were not so flattering. And it's like, screw you, and I'm sitting here feeling like better and I have more energy. And it's like, and I was also told by people, you're never going to get the body you had back, so stop trying. You're never going to be the same size as you were when you were. And I'm like, I just like whatever. And you know what? I do have some pants and some outfits from Arizona, and guess what?
Nicole fits into them.
Yeah, they're outdated, but I mean, like, that was a
Everything comes back around eventually.
right. I threw a lot of it out, but yeah, I mean, it was an energetic clearing. I think for me, that's what that was. When I was that was a phase for me that was indicative of a change in, it was just another chapter of my life.
So here are the threads that I've pulled from your story so far. This is what I'm gathering. You have done a lot of things. You've had a lot of jobs, girl. And you barely touched on there's the thing of cancer. I just feel like we don't have time to get into it today. I've heard you give an interview one time on your brother's journey with cancer and how that affected you, right? You being all of a sudden everything in your life as a child, your parents' life, right, revolved around your brother's health, right, or lack thereof. But and I mean, of course, as a parent, I totally understand that. But how that affected you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you talk about, which is so interesting because you talk about being neglected as a child and emancipating really early, and yet that story about Red Wagon produce and everything, like it sounds so nurturing and wholesome and all of that. But regardless, right? Something happened between the Red Wagon produce and
Something happened since I was born. And here's something, I worked with youth in crisis and children in dangerous and neglectful and abusive relationship, families and stuff. It's not all bad. And I had, and again, when you're born into something, you don't know what you don't
Yeah.
know. It's normal
Normal.
when your father flies off the handle and starts punching holes in the wall, because that's what
That's
you
just what daddy does when
it's
he's angry.
yeah. And it's normal that your mother never touches you, kisses you, holds you, or hugs you, because she never did. It's
Yeah.
not until later in life that we learn that, alcoholism is a disease, and here's some of the things that happen, and it's not okay.
Yeah.
Right? It was normal, and I never felt like it was okay. And I always would try and run away, or, you know, I mean, kids act out because they need help. And so that's one thing that I knew that really drew me into working with kids and
Yeah.
families in crisis. Because, I mean, it's unfortunate, but at the same time, I'm so grateful for the family that I was born into, because I wouldn't be who I am now if not. And I can compare my story and compare my life to other people and say, oh, what a shame, oh, poor me. But how would that help anything? It was just an is. That's what I mean by an is. Like, that was life. And I dealt with it. And that's what we do, all of us. We figure out how to navigate. um, you know I didn't know that my mother has like severe mental health issues. Everybody loved her. She got in the paper, like, she was always getting accolades for her professional performance. She's brilliant, but she's also a narcissist who's incapable of actual empathy. And so when you grow up with these situations, it's not that they're all bad. I worked with kids who I couldn't even tell you on air the horrible things that were done to them and that they went through. Super traumatic. And yet they still want their mom and dad. They still want to
Yes.
be accepted. They still remember happy moments. And so nothing is all bad. It's, life is a, never ending events, and they're just neutral. It's how we experience them and what we feel about them that makes them positive or negative.
Well, that's so interesting, right? Because that's where we sort of started, right? With you saying, like, if we talk about how I do anything is how I do everything. And then I asked you how you respond in a crisis. But one of the things you said is, I want to get better at recognizing what my edge is, right? Recognizing, trusting myself, recognizing that intuitive part of me, and knowing that it's okay,
Mm-hmm.
right? That it's okay when something felt really good and then it doesn't feel really good anymore, right?
Yeah.
To be like, hey, this isn't feeling good anymore, instead of going through getting really busy and making yourself sick and all of that. And yeah, I just love where love takes us, right? So
Yeah.
I love that you're able to look at your story. And I mean, you've dropped some serious bombs, which I'm like, whoa, I could talk about having a narcissistic mom for another hour. I don't know anybody, right? Most of the time when I hear about narcissists, I'm hearing about men. So I'm like super interested in that.
And
But
histrionic. And it's an interesting, from this vantage point where I'm at now, it's
yeah,
a very interesting story. Being in it wasn't. And so I haven't had any contact with her actually since 2014, because that's what's healthy for me.
right.
Right. And people go, oh, you don't talk to your mom? Like, what's wrong with you? It's like, nothing.
Well, and same, but
It doesn't feel good.
But
So,
this is the thread I'm gleaning from your journey, is that you are reflective, right? One, you're a doer. So if
yeah.
you don't know Nicole, she's a doer. So part of that, like, getting busy is like, when you want to do something, this girl will move mountains, like, come hell or high water. When she sets her mind to something, it's going to happen. And sometimes when you're setting your mind to something, it may be against, like you were saying, against what your heart is telling you, what that still small voice is saying. And that's what you were talking about earlier, like trying to prove myself right. But what I'm hearing over and over and over and over and over in your story is that it's, you are, and this is what you said in the beginning, we're all evolving beings, right? You are this beautiful story of continual evolution. We are all that story of continual evolution, right? It's just how aware we become of it. And you have taken, like, each thing that has happened to you, right? Like, you went emancipated, you had a childhood that was less than ideal, and then you wanted to use that to help, right? You became a foster mom, you worked in the correction system, you want to just take your evolution and use what has happened to you to help. And what I think is so interesting about working in the correctional system and then getting heavy and getting sick, and while you were in that, is like, those were the signs, right? Those were the signs that your work here is done, or it's
done.
time to evolve again, right?
Yeah,
And
it had to get so bad.
yes. And now in the work that you're doing now, like, I've watched that evolve a few times as well. And each time you're stepping into a more true version of yourself, something that is better in honoring your gifts, right? And what you can bring, but you're bringing that wealth of experience and empathy. That's like, which is great coming from a narcissistic mother, like the fact that you could be this empathetic. I don't know, maybe that's
Blessing and curse, right? Yeah. And the thing is, like, again, when you're a baby, so like when I was 23, I was in Germany, and I wound up getting diagnosed with epilepsy. My father flew over. I was in the hospital. My father flew over. My mother couldn't be bothered. She sent a.
Did your mothers and fathers stay married?
They did. They did not. That's a whole nother story. No, when I left my husband because of it wasn't a fit, and we can talk about that another time. When I left my husband, that gave me a tension in the eyes of my mother, so she decided to leave my father of almost 40 years.
That's not funny, but okay.
It is. It's like it's a bizarre, like, I mean, maybe it's so yeah. At that point, when she was very excited to call me in Germany while I'm in the middle of like a life crisis, and to say, "Oh, guess what? I decided to leave your father. I'm inspired by you."
Well, isn't that great that you could be an inspiration?
Isn't that great? So yeah, no, they were not together at that time. She had just kicked him out, and she also had like a full-time job as a teacher that she could get time off and come, but that wasn't. She had aerobics, and she had, whatever. So my father came to Germany, and the doctor, of course, was asking him questions about, they're trying to get to the bottom of why I've been having seizures and all this. And they asked, when I was really young, had I been dropped or did I hit my head somehow? He's like, well, yeah. I mean, Nicole, there are a few times, and the one that really like just stuck with me to where like I had to leave the room and stuck with me for years was that, well, Marilyn didn't, that's my mom's name. And God bless you, Mom, if you're listening. I love you. It's just the truth, what's going on here.
Yeah.
So yeah, Marilyn, really didn't take to the baby, and really didn't like to hold her or anything. So one day I was out in the living room, and I heard some big thud in the kitchen and Nicole crying, and Marilyn was there. I don't know if she was, I forget what he said, cooking or doing homework or whatever it was, reading. And he said, and Nicole was on the ground crying, and I asked what happened, and she said, I rolled off the counter.
The kitchen counter?
Yeah. So, I mean, like, stuff like that. And he also told the story. Here's the other one that stuck with me. And we were in Toronto. Winters are really bad, and I was born in February. And I guess I was a colicky baby. So when I was crying and, not a good baby, I guess, that they didn't know what to do with, they would bundle me up in all my winter clothes as a very young baby, infant, and toddler, and put me, not toddler quite, but a baby, and they would put me out on the balcony in my stroller until I stopped crying. So like, these are the kinds of things I was born into, right? Yes. And so when that's your situation, that you have ill-equipped parents, it doesn't, I don't hold anything against them. They are humans, and they are living the best life they can. They always did the best they could do. I believe that. And at the same time, it served me in being who I am now. But Were there things that I wish never happened? Of course,
Of course.
but they did. And so when you have a situation with a volatile father who's an alcoholic and um, just, I think, unhappy in life, and
Yeah.
then a mother who is completely absent of I don't know, whatever, who needs attention all the time, you learn how to navigate that from the time you're a baby because
You
you
have to.
have to.
Yeah.
There's no other way, right? And so you know that if you do X, you learn. If I do X, Y happens, right? And so that's really what called me in to serve. It wasn't necessarily that I ever realized I was being neglected. It wasn't until many,
Right.
many, many years later in my adulthood when I was working with kids and studying all this. I'm like, huh, interesting.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I
And
knew there
yet
were
you
things
were
that were
led
bad.
there. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You were led to work with kids to learn that about yourself, to start. I don't know where you were on your healing journey, right? But you have been on, since I've known you, right, a
Yeah.
healing journey,
Oh,
internal,
decades.
physical healing, right,
Yeah.
emotional healing, like all of it. And I love that our businesses and our business connections and all of it have turned into spiritual practices, right? Like every person that is in our lives is here to grow us or to
Yeah.
heal us or to teach us or to, you know, they're all, or to challenge us. Um, yeah,
And I just want to say too,
yeah.
I'm no different than you or anybody.
No.
These are just my experiences in life. And one thing I learned when I was 16 and I was living in this like crack house with roaches everywhere and it was pretty gross.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where I was. And I was living in the city in Montreal and I was I couldn't even buy toilet paper. I had to steal toilet paper. That was like the low of my life. Um, no, not the low, but I mean one
One
of
of
the lows. Yeah.
them.
If I'm honest. And I wound up having taking all the change I could find. So this is back in the 90s, and going to a payphone outside in the winter and standing there and putting change in. So I was in Canada, in Montreal, and
Yeah.
I was calling my best friend back in Maryland because I thought I just want to hear how she's doing. I just want an escape, right? Like
Right.
life was that was tough.
Yes. Yeah.
There are real things going on that, a 16-year-old doesn't normally need to deal with. And I
Yeah.
just thought I need a break. I may have been 17 at the time, actually. I was probably 17. Yeah.
Either way.
So I called Lori and we were talking and it was like right away. And I'm, again, this is back in the day, we have to pay
Yes.
money to have a
Yes.
call, and especially a long distance call. And she is like crying when we get on the phone. She got a perm and it was bad. It frizzed her hair out. She broke a nail and she didn't have a date for prom. And I lost my freaking mind on her because I'm sitting there, standing there, freezing in the middle of like in a phone booth, thinking, I just need a friend. I just need like a friend to hold on to. And she's sitting here complaining about things like that. And I lost it on her and made her cry. And it was in that moment when I hung up the phone that I literally stood there in the booth and I was like, what did I just do? Her problems are her problems. And thank God, the worst thing in the world that she has to deal with is bad hair, a broken nail, and no date. Thank God she doesn't know what I'm going through. Why should she? Why should she have to? And it was in that moment that I recognized we cannot compare our struggles or our situations to anybody else. And that lesson at 17 is what really formed a lot of my position on how I have interacted with youth in crisis, with kids. I've gone through sitting through rape kits with little girls who, happened in their family. So I've always been able to take on and be there, hold space with people in crisis. And you're right, when it came to a point where I was just done, my body and everything my soul was trying to tell me, and it just took me a while to realize it. So that's the goal, is just realize the messages faster, move through and evolve.
Nicole, I just love you. I think this conversation, I feel like, holy crap, there's like 11 shows in this. Like, we're going to have to have some more conversations, because this is the stuff, right? Your public face, your public persona. I'm sure you're telling bits and pieces of this in places that you go, because I'd heard your brother's cancer story. Like, I know you're an open book, but quite honestly, when we get stuck up in our professional stuff and what we do and how we help people, like, you help people in an amazing way that actually has nothing to do with youth in crisis at the moment, right? Like, you're the people who you are helping are entrepreneurs that are up to big things in the world. And it is so cool to just know that you didn't just show up as, and I think that's what it was interesting to me about your weight loss journey, is you didn't just show up as how I get to perceive you through the lens of great marketing now, right? That you are an open, honest, beautiful, evolving soul. And I just love that. And my alarm went off to go pick up my kids, so I really have to end this interview. But thank you so, so much for being here. You're amazing. I love you. For everyone else who's watching, if you haven't already, somewhere around this video, depending on where you're watching it, will be Nicole's professional bio and all her amazing links. And check her out. She's got a podcast that is, just follow her and be in her tribe, because she's amazing. You're welcome. All right, I got to go pick up kids. So thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. We'll see you guys later.